Welcome to the Righteous Uproar, folks. It's the podcast where we mix Michigan moxie with a pinch of facts. I'm your host, Tamara Graham, broadcasting straight from the heart of the Great Lakes State. Grab a seat, buckle up, or hold on tight, because it is a wild ride as we wade through the tumultuously swampy waters of U.S. politics and her characters at play. It's election season, folks, and we have another candidate for you today. We have an amazing woman on our podcast who some of you may know from our podcasts on the hijacking of Ottawa County, Marcia Mansaray. Marcia is the former Deputy Public Health Officer of Ottawa County. Through this whole fiasco of the Ottawa Impact folks doing everything within their power to try to hijack our Constitution within Ottawa County, Marcia has decided to retire from her position as Deputy Public Health Officer and run as a Democrat in Michigan's 85th House District. And for those of you who know, Marcia used to be a Republican right up until this whole mess. But no more. She has seen the light after experiencing the dark firsthand. Enough from me. Let's get this party started with Marcia.
Hello.
Hi, I am so excited that you are running for public office. I cannot even tell you.
Thank you.
I got that email and I was like, I literally was like, oh my goodness, like out loud. I was so excited.
Well, if I had like a war chest, I would hire you. Be my cheerleader and communications team.
I will do it from this platform gladly and happily. So there is a lot I want to talk to you about with your campaign. And interestingly enough, Ottawa County is my largest listening audience. Gee, I wonder why.
I wonder why. We just had one of our epidemiologists was at the bus stop with his kid waiting for the bus to come. And a guy was there that he thought, oh, this guy looks a little rough. He's probably not going to like me. And the guy says, so where do you work? And my epidemiologist says, Ottawa County. He said, well, where in Ottawa County? I said, the health department. He said, oh, I want to thank you for your service. Like he's a veteran or something, you know. And he's like, yeah. He goes, I think I found a friend. And, you know. But we've often talked about, use battlefield analogies, but we thought we were overstepping a bit by doing that. But to have a community member thank us for our service, that's pretty sweet.
Absolutely. Fantastic. So I hear this is a hotly contested seat. Is it?
Well, yes. Well, I don't know. Let's see. So the seat that I'm running in is for the 85th House District, the State House. And a Democrat has run against the incumbent who has been Republican for the last 3 cycles. And the Democrat has never won. Last time in 22, it was 70-30.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So it's a real conservative area of a very conservative county. But mine is the only state house district that's completely within the boundaries of Ottawa County. Everybody else has got another county in their district except for me.
Understood.
So that's kind of fun. I feel like it's all my people and I'm home. So I had a nice conversation with the incumbent, Bradley Slaw. We had a 2-hour talk at a Big B.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we talked about all kinds of different things. And I said, I am going to win this. He's like, no, you're not going to win this. I said, well, I'd like to narrow the gap significantly. He goes, you should be really happy if you can get 5% more.
Oh, okay. My goodness.
But
you keep that attitude that you're going to win this.
Yes.
Keep it in the board.
We're in a different year. I mean, this community has never been in 2024 going through what we've gone through in 23 and 24. And so what's really hotly contested is everything in Ottawa County. There is, in this very red community who hasn't voted for a Democratic president since Abraham Lincoln, there are 11 Democrats running for the 11 commissioner seats.
Oh, wow.
And we just elected our second Democrat commissioner ever in our history in a recall election 2 weeks ago.
So that did happen.
It did happen, a 60-40 split, and it happened. It didn't change the majority in the Board of Commissioners, but it did narrow it down, and it said a lot. It said a lot to our community.
That is a very loud voice.
It's a very loud voice.
Sorry, Bradley, you're not winning.
And for the 4 state house districts, there's a 5th, but it has just a tiny little bit in the county. So the 4 main ones all have a Democrat running as well. For the commission districts, the 11 commission districts, for the county commissioners, there are also less extreme Republicans. I would say normal Republicans generally running in at least 10 of them. So we're going to have a primary runoff in the Republican primary, but in November, unlike last year, we're going to have another choice in every single county commissioner race.
Oh, wow.
So that's a beautiful thing.
That's advancing. Yeah, that's advancing from where it's been, which makes me very happy.
It's healthier.
So much. Oh my gosh, yes. That says so much about what you all have gone through. So maybe it needed to happen, as difficult as it was, to shake things up a little bit, make people realize, hey, we've been complacent and look what's happening because of it.
So, as we got into the early part of this year, there wasn't a Democrat that was willing to run against Bradley Slaw this year. And so it was empty, and it hadn't been empty in prior cycles. And so they told me that and asked me if I would be willing. And one of the county commissioners said, I know you're interested in running for county commissioner because it means a lot to you, because you felt the pain of the commission not operating well. I say that gently.
Directly felt the pain.
Directly felt the pain, had the front seat, was the embattled department. He said, but I don't think that's the right spot for you. He goes, Marcia, I want you to consider going to the state, because there are laws that need to be changed, and you know what they are, and you felt the vulnerability of them, so you know what to do. I want you to try that. And so then I talked to people, and they said there wasn't anyone running. I'm like, well, if there's no one running, then doggone it, yes, I will run. It's an ethical decision for me, because I can't have another ballot where there's just one choice and people don't have another one. If they're not happy with that choice, they don't have another one to make. So I'd love to have more than 2 healthy parties, but 2 at least. So
it's a start.
Yeah.
It's going in the right direction.
Yeah.
So let's talk about that a little bit, because some people may not know, prior to the whole COVID fiasco in your county, and that you were a Republican, a lifelong Republican. So talk about the transition there.
Yeah, this will probably get me in trouble with lots of friends and family and neighbors. But yes, I was raised a Christian and a Republican in a Republican community, in a Republican family. And that transition didn't start until 2016, really. And, we had Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump running against each other. And like quite a few people I know, people in this community were sort of like, I don't know if I want to vote for either of these people, because it's a very, 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 very conservative and pro-life kind of community. It's a big deal. Like, if you have the endorsement of the right to life of Michigan or right to life of Ottawa County, you win that election. That's kind of how that goes. And so I think voting for Hillary maybe felt like giving up on that to some people. And I was one of those people, not necessarily for that reason, but I didn't know politics very well. I hadn't paid a lot of attention. I just voted R. But Donald Trump didn't have the character that I felt was necessary for an elected official who is going to serve their country. And like, just one thing, when someone is unfaithful to their spouse and they've made a promise, that tells me they don't keep their word. And that had happened multiple times in this situation. And so for the one relationship that's supposed to be the most important and you're most accountable to, failing on that multiple times over and over and over again, that's an easy one. And there were so many other examples. And so when I'm looking for someone to vote for, I'm looking at character first. And if they check, I can check that box. Like, yes, there's integrity. They do what they say they're going to do. They speak the truth. They keep their word. Then I can go on to, okay, do they have the competence for this? Is there any relevant experience? And that was a struggle too, for former President Trump, for Donald Trump. And then, if they've checked both of those boxes that I look at, do they have the will, to do this, the courage to do the right thing? But I didn't even get to that question there. And so that was the first time then in my memory, I could be forgetting some, but that I didn't vote for a Republican president. And I honestly don't remember who I voted for. I just know that I did not vote for Donald Trump. And then 2020 came along and I couldn't there either.
It was even worse at that point.
It was so much worse. I mean, we had a huge global crisis going on with a pandemic that we hadn't had in 100 years to that scale. And he really failed on responding well to a crisis of that magnitude. And seeing the growing division over those 4 years and the opposite, the decreasing civility in our country, all of those things I felt could be attributed, at least in part, if not directly, to the president. And it was the first time that I'd seen a president who didn't act presidential. Now, I canvassed for the recall election that we had here a couple of weeks ago, and I had people tell me, hey, I admire a person who says what they're going to do, and they do it. And I said, well, what if what they're going to do isn't a good thing? Like following through on that isn't always the right thing to do. So there's a big change in 2020. And then I began to vote other ways on the ballot. And in 2022, then it came home. Like it came right home. And for the first time, me, the lazy voter, learned how important elections are from the school board on up the ballot. Like crucially important. And I had really, really ignored all of that. I mean, really, if it wasn't at the U.S. Congress level, I wasn't very invested. Maybe governor. I'd probably pay attention to governor.
Yeah.
And I'm so sorry about that.
You had a lot of company because prior to 2016, really, there was so much apathy in politics. Now it's like a hyper focus on politics, but people don't listen and they don't learn. That's where we kind of are right now with Donald Trump being back in the ballot. But you going through what you did with Ottawa County transformed the way that you look, not only at politics, but your community, your party. I want you to talk a little bit about the struggle that you had. You don't need to go into the details of everything that happened, but with that political shift, you had a lot of public health challenges to overcome, as being the deputy director of public health there. Was that the title? I know it was public health officer, correct? Deputy public health officer?
Deputy health officer.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
yes.
Yeah.
So there was a public challenge there. So talk a little bit more about that, because that's really what brings us to where we are today with you really running, I think. Even though the transformation was starting to happen, it was that personal experience of being attacked and the rule of law and public health not being followed.
You are 100% right. I would not be sitting here having this conversation with you without what happened in my community. And I can give all of the credit for my political aspirations to a group called Ottawa Impact. They get all the credit. I would have never done this if it wasn't for them. So I don't know if that's a silver lining. I think it's a silver lining for me. Hopefully they think it's a silver lining, but I don't think so. So I had the privilege of being a nonpartisan civil servant for almost 20 years, doing a job I loved that served the people in my community that I was trained for, I was good at. I had a team that was expert team that also had the same level of passion. And it didn't matter how I voted. It was never a consideration. It was just that I was a capable professional and working with my community to protect their health and safety around things that individuals have almost no control over, like your air, your water, your food supply, the sewage, and dangerous communicable diseases like measles and tuberculosis and things like that. So we're doing that work all the time, and if we do it really well, nothing happens. Like, you don't ever see those huge health challenges that are beyond your control because we're doing our job.
Things are boring.
Things are really boring. And so that was another reason why I never really thought about it. And I saw these county commissioners, I interacted with them all the time, and their meetings were pretty boring and they were really short, and things just got done, and it really wasn't, I didn't pay that much attention. And there were many years where I didn't know all of their names. Now I know all of their names backwards and forwards, and everyone else I know knows all of their names too. But when COVID came, this nonpartisan, science-based statutory department became a political football. And a group called Ottawa Impact, who was really disgruntled about COVID restrictions and mitigation measures, decided that they were going to take over the commission, because the Board of Commissioners didn't fire the health officer. They didn't remove the orders. They didn't defy the governor. And they, those men and women answered those questions and said, we can't. It's not, like, we don't have the authority to do any of those things. It would be against the law. But they ran on that, and they ran on the health department again as a political football. They looked at every program we did and made a story about it that wasn't true. Like, there was a kernel of truth. And then they spun a really negative, quite kind of evil. We sounded like a horrible place. We were groomers, we were Satanists, we were destroying the lives of children and families in Ottawa County. We were, piece by piece, removing people's freedom. It was just, all based on, the name of a program or a piece of education they saw on our website or something, and it would get twisted. So, and then they won. I mean, they won in the primary. Because there was no Democrat running against them. There was just Republicans running against Republicans. So it's like the Republican Party in Ottawa County decided to divide itself. They were calling each other rhinos and all this kind of stuff. And I think this is happening beyond us, but it's like, what a terrible strategy to attack your own party members and push yourselves farther apart, get more extreme on one end, to the very right end. And they also talked about being Christians, and that was a really big part of their campaigning. And so they used kind of a Christian nationalistic hyper-patriotism and hyper-Christianity, and it worked because they branded themselves really well. They had a lot of money. It was very slick. It was very well marketed. And their main tenets on their signs and things was family, freedom, and faith. And like, not very many people are going to argue with you about those three things, just as words.
Right.
So they took over and started breaking the law within the first hour. And I knew it was coming because I was the health department. We saw all the lies. We saw all the brutality. We saw, the spinning of tales to tell the community, the residents, when they went door knocking. We knew all about it, but nobody else did. And we were kind of behind the scenes before that. Just people didn't even know who we were, really.
Right.
Yeah. If you were a restaurant owner, you knew to go to the health department, or if you wanted a vaccine for your baby, you maybe knew to go to the health department. But otherwise, people didn't know the scope of what we did. And, so they won on no more orders, no more COVID, right-sizing the health department, which meant cutting it down to the least amount that we can get it down to. And they did try to do that. They almost closed our doors. So it was a lot of pain seeing people get fired, budgets slashed, staff getting checked into psychiatric care, leaving work because of like using the names and pictures of our staff and talking about them in really, I mean, in my mind, evil ways. I mean, it was bad. It was really bad. It was the worst example of Christianity that I've ever witnessed. And people in the community, some of the people were waking up, but just not enough. And so that was the start of experiencing it. And I would say a couple months in, I started thinking, you know what, I need to maybe step up and do something about this. It was actually probably only 4 weeks into it. And I started using my voice.
And here we are today.
And here we are today.
Amplifying it even more. We are going to take a quick break here to talk a few minutes about something very important to me and for Michigan. Our Bring the Love initiative through our Love Where You Live Foundation. Did you know that in Michigan, 85% of our fire departments are made up of volunteers? Well, now you do. These volunteers all work full-time jobs and careers outside of the fire department. Some are even business owners, and many have families. Most of them have families. They sacrifice a lot for us and go above and beyond what a typical full-time firefighter provides to our communities. Our selfless volunteers make themselves available to answer the calls when we need them, day and night without fail. And most of us take them for granted. They brave the flames, the crashes, the crises, putting their lives on the line for all of us daily. And most of us don't recognize it, and they are not appreciated nearly enough. But who's there for them when the sirens fade? At Live Love Local Michigan, we know firsthand the challenges our first responders face. Not only physical dangers, but often unseen mental health battles through stress-related injuries. And that's why we've launched the Bring the Love initiative, a lifeline for Michigan's volunteer firefighters and first responders. Partnering with the UCF Restores program, we are redefining how PTSD and trauma are not only understood, but diagnosed and treated. Our goal with this initiative is to restore lives, families, and communities. And through evidence-based treatment, cutting-edge technology, and an unwavering dedication, the Bring the Love initiative also supports the creation of a more trauma-informed society throughout Michigan. One where mental health stigma is dismantled and those in need are empowered to seek the help they need and deserve. Through peer support training, department-based post-traumatic event discussion, county-based community liaisons, and our statewide Red Line Rescue database of licensed professionals, we are connecting our unsung heroes with those who understand their unique challenges. We are training hundreds of people in peer support and equipping licensed professionals with the tools to provide culturally competent care to our volunteers. We are also developing a critical incidents response team to stand ready to deploy in times of need, offering immediate mental health support during community tragedies and crises, such as mass shootings, which we have far too many of these days. But we can't do it alone, folks. Your support is crucial. Every purchase from our firefighter product line or a direct donation through our website helps to fund this life-changing initiative. Together, we can ensure that our first responders not only survive, but thrive. Join us in ending the stigma around mental health and providing the support our unsung heroes deserve. Visit lovewhereyoulivefoundation.org to donate and be directed to our firefighter shop. The products sold in our shop directly support this initiative. You will also find links to all of our resources in our show notes. Share these resources with literally everyone you know. I mean, literally everyone. Together, let's make Michigan's communities stronger and more resilient, because when we support those who support us, everyone wins. Everyone wins. So let's talk about your campaign goals. I was reading on your website what the issues that you're running on, and much of it is what you just discussed as well. Advocating for the increased transparency in government, strengthening public health codes. Elaborate a little bit more on how and specific policies that you plan to implement to achieve these goals.
Yeah, so there are 5 lawsuits that have been started in the first 14 months of these new county commissioners taking their seats. And so those lawsuits were very instructive. none of them have been successful yet. The courts grind slowly. And I don't know about legislation, but I have a feeling it can grind fairly slow too. But it feels like we need to take a legislative look at solving this so that other communities in Michigan don't experience what we've experienced, and we don't experience it again. So there is and continues to be a tremendous lack of transparency. The way most people govern it that I've witnessed locally, they're quite transparent because you're governing for your neighbor. And, they know you. They go to the same grocery store that you do. You're shoveling your sidewalk together in the winter. So you can't get away with stuff as much. But their very first meeting illustrated really clearly of what I would call a violation of the Open Meetings Act. Now, the Attorney General did look into it, and the law, as I found with many of our laws, is written for a population that basically follows the law. Like the rule of law means something. And they imagine there might be one or two people who might have devious ideas, but probably never thought there would be a whole slate of people with devious identical ideas, all bound together to do the same thing no matter what. And so while they didn't violate the spirit of the current Open Meetings Act in Michigan, they certainly, or the letter of it, they certainly violated the spirit. And for people who talk about being Christians, if I remember the Bible stories that I've heard, Jesus talked all about the spirit of his law and not just the letter of it. So it says, thou shalt not kill, but if you hate someone, I believe, that's considered the same, he would say. So it's very much like, that's a flagrant violation when you come in and you have an agenda that has 2 items on it, which one is to be sworn in, and the second agenda item is to set the board bylaws. And then 5 or 6 additional agenda items get added during the meeting. That is supposed to be just those things. That's all you're supposed to do. It's the very first meeting. You're not supposed to have even hardly met each other. But this orchestrated drama unfolds, and they begin firing the county administrator. And then magically, there is a new person in a suit and tie with a speech being hired right there. No job posting, no interviews, nothing publicly done. And no person in our community got to speak into that agenda item and say what they thought about it. And that's crucial. That's why you have an agenda that's publicly posted ahead of time. And then they fire the corporation counsel, the attorney for the county of 40 years, and bring in a legal group that are associates with the chairperson. The whole committee of commissioners votes for the same person to be the chair, who then executes all of these things. And then they start to fire the health officer of the health department. And there they get stuck because the one Democrat commissioner who had been there for 4 years already and knows the law and has some experience said, "Who are you talking about? And I don't think you can do this." And so then that kind of hung up that steamrolling meeting. But that terrified the health department that had already been through COVID, and the division that we know came into COVID as that went along, and then went through the 2022 of being demonized as a political pawn for this group, and now they're attacking their director, their health officer. Luckily, the law is specific about health officers. They're kind of like an elected official, but it's more like a Supreme Court judge. They're appointed, and it's a lifetime appointment. And you don't get removed unless you remove yourself or you're removed for cause, which means you have to willingly and knowingly do something very wrong, or embezzle or things like that, or be incompetent, like something has happened and you can't do your job anymore. So that part is pretty clear. What's not clear is how that process is to happen. And those are the other two laws that I would want to work on. It's the county commissioner law and it's the public health code in Michigan. The county commissioner's law basically talks of being able to fire the health officer, and it does speak about cause, but it doesn't really say a lot about it. And then it just says, if they have cause according to the board's opinion. And that's it.
Yeah, that's a little,
That's pretty vague. Now, every board I've known before this board, that would have been fine. I mean, they actually would have carried it out really well. It does say that there needs to be evidence presented to the health officer before they fire them, and they have to take a vote. But we knew that would happen with this board. Absolutely 100%. So when they tried to fire her and then they found out in the middle of this meeting that they probably can't do that, they demoted her and appointed a new health officer right there. But that demotion is legally a termination. It's an effective termination. And so that began a lawsuit, the first lawsuit. And that whole meeting became the second lawsuit. And that is still going through appeals and is now at the Michigan Supreme Court, but has failed on the first two court cases for it.
Do we know when the Michigan Supreme Court is supposed to look at that case? Is it
I do not
probably
know.
sometime this summer?
The case that they're making is that when you are an elected official, you're kind of a de facto official the moment you win that election. And when you have 7 or 8 out of 11 people who all agree and who all have the same mission, and they're meeting as a body before they take their oath of office, and they're making decisions about who's going to be the chair, who's going to be the vice chair, who do we want to be the new legal counsel, who we're going to get rid of the county administrator, who do we want that to be? We're going to get rid of the health officer, who do we want that to be? We don't believe in equity, that's evil. We're going to remove the diversity, equity, inclusion office. We don't like the logo of the county or the motto, where you belong. We're going to change it to where freedom rings, because there has been no freedom in Ottawa County until we've arrived. So they were making all of these decisions, and they just executed those like it was like watching a production. I mean, all the people, the new people, the replacements were all there. They were all in their suits and they all had their speeches ready. And
very well orchestrated.
Very, very well orchestrated. And so I think there's a place in this law and this might be novel, and we're working on it in the court system, but I think legislatively I would like to do something similar and consider that when you are elected and your election is confirmed by your clerk, whatever that is, whatever level you're at, honestly, but I'm really concerned about the local level, that you have to follow the Open Meetings Act at that point. Like, you don't gather together and 1 or 2 people can talk to each other, but you can't have a quorum gathering together and making plans before you've even taken your oath of office. So they won that on technicalities, but to me it was a flagrant violation of the spirit of that law. Mm-hmm. The spirit is everything you do needs to be visible to your voters, to your community, to the people who live in there. So you don't make decisions before meetings, and the meetings are still like this. They're very much still like this, except they write what they're going to say ahead of time and they read it at the meeting. But it's all been, you can tell it's all been discussed and planned out. Yeah. They look at each other, they make nods, it's very clear that there's messages being sent about how we're going to vote and who's going to say the next thing. It's very convenient for people who want to pull the wool over their community's eyes and do something they're not supposed to do. And so I might find it a difficult law to change because there may be people at the state who feel the same way.
I think the odds right now are in your favor
I think they should be.
To change a law like this of where
Yes.
we are with our legislature in the state of Michigan. And we're living in an unprecedented times.
Yes.
It's like these laws have been skirted very craftily. I mean, they're expert at what they do. I cannot deny that. We can say certain things and say we can call people, I'm just going to say the word, we can call people idiots or stupid or what have you. The fact of the matter is that the far right is very well organized and their messaging is spot on for their messaging. It's not good pardon me, it's not good messaging, it's not positive messaging, but it is spot on messaging for their messaging. So we are living in unprecedented times and they are skirting there. I really truly feel that they deliberately are following the rule of law and they're pushing it to its limits to see how far they can go. And so you coming in and wanting to change these laws to directly address the activities and the actions that have happened, as you said, violating the spirit of it, very close to crossing the line, to eliminate that line is very important to move forward and not allow this to happen ever again in your county, in any part of the United States moving forward. So I am right there with you on that one.
Thank you. Thank you. And it made me so mad. I mean, I saw so many violations that, I spoke to reporters about it. I put in op-ed columns about it. I was just so angry. Freedom of Information Act requests, I mean, they were misusing those. So there's a lot. And, it is vital for people to be able to trust their government. And one way of trusting is being able to have access to what the government is doing. We're not a business. Okay, we are there to serve you. We have services. That's what we provide to promote your welfare, your health, and your safety. And none of that should be secret. And so when we make decisions, we make them publicly at a meeting that you can attend, and you can call us or email us and talk to us. So this should not be a hard decision, and it ought to be a bipartisan
Absolutely.
bill.
Absolutely.
Right. Yeah. So I'm excited to do it. I'm going to need to work with others. I'm going to need some smart people around me, but I know what needs to be done. And so my run for office to be state representative, I have a specific duty that I'm going there to do. And there's a few laws that I want to strengthen that were probably made for moral people who they assume you're going to be normal and care, and now we need to put, some brakes in there and guardrails. And then, if there's any other good work I can get done it's a 2-year term, it's not a long term. So I'm hoping that the wheels of legislation don't move very slowly, because I would like to get this done in one term.
Awesome. I think it's fantastic. I want to do a shift a little bit to talk about a different subject. So environmental
Sure.
advocacy, you have that on there as well. Like you spoke about, or you speak on your website about your involvement in advocating for smoke-free air and better air quality. And then what future initiatives do you have planned to protect air and water quality in Michigan? We have this big discussion that really isn't a big discussion out loud, I think. And it happened prior to me coming back to Michigan, so I've had to do some catch up on it. The Line 5 pipeline built through the Straits of Mackinac, which is the same company that Kalamazoo experienced the leak with. What are your thoughts on that pipeline? And the way, I don't know if you're familiar with how the Schneider administration kind of skirted around making that happen, and other environmental advocacy initiatives in the state of Michigan.
Yeah, so, this is sort of a poetic bookend moment for me, because my very first project as a public health professional was to pass a smoke-free indoor air regulation for Ottawa County. And I had a great team around me. I had great community members who were passionate about this. And I had my own personal reason, because I had a mother who had lung challenges, and poor quality air made it very, very difficult for her to breathe. Very, very difficult, to the point where she became very isolated in the last few months of her life. And I would notice her oxygen levels dropping if we tried to take a little walk down the driveway into the neighbor's house. If the neighbor was drying their laundry in their dryer with a dryer sheet, because the perfume of the dryer sheet shut her lungs down. And so I learned a lot about health equity. So there I was with my healthy lungs, just noticing the fragrance and not having any problem breathing because I wasn't compromised in any way. And I had every advantage. She didn't. And, and she died from that. And so this was a cause that I was really eager to take on. And we were successful. And we were the first county on the west side of the state, the conservative red west side of the state, to pass this almost, I think it was 8 to 10, or 8 to 2 out of 10 commissioners. And so we did a great job, and then the state was surprised that we were able to do that in Ottawa County. And that's the kind of commissioners that I knew, the kind of Republicans that I knew. They were collaborative, they cared, they were innovative, they wanted healthy communities and healthy people. They were willing to vote for something like that now would be called an anti-freedom, law.
Right.
So I love that now at the end, I'm retiring in 5 days. I'm going to do something similar. And so environmentally, air and water quality, there's more than just air and water in your environment in one sense, but those are the biggies. Air is hard and it moves, right? You don't get to put up a wall. You can't make a well and, put a container around it and a top on it and all that kind of thing. So air is something we all need to be thinking about. We're talking about climate change. That's another really big, important subject. For water, Michigan is uniquely situated in the world. This peninsula, this mitten with water all around it and above it, above the Upper Peninsula and Lake Superior. And then we've got groundwater. Now we're having significant groundwater concerns in Ottawa County. We are running out of groundwater.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yes, we are. With the development that's going on, agriculture, irrigating. We have a lot of agriculture, which we're very happy to have, but you irrigate it. And then we're the fastest growing county in Michigan, and we have been for more than a decade. And so those two things combined, on all the things that you do when you have more people, we have run out of some of our aquifers that are under the ground, and we have a clay cap that is keeping those from recharging from the rain. So it's not recharging them, they're not refilling. And Michigan State University and many other researchers have been working on this with us and studying it to try to understand it. But that's really scary to think that those big, huge natural bodies, like it's a big lake kind of under the ground, usually with stone around it, but there's some clay around on some of these. And to think that those are getting exhausted and they're not refilling. And what are we going to do about that? And then we've got our Great Lakes. And many people have their eyes on that water.
Yes.
Water bottling companies want to come and take that water. I'm sure Arizona would love that water.
Yeah. I believe Nestle already does bottle water and out of doesn't it?
Yeah. So we need to be very careful. There's not that many huge areas of fresh water around like that. And so it's a whole water system, and we need to better understand that and the under the ground parts, how that connects to these Great Lakes and to the rain and the climate changes that are coming with higher temperatures lately and less rain. So all of that is very important. If we can't breathe and we don't have water, we don't live very long.
Right.
Quality of life is not even a part of the discussion. It's just living or not living. And so these are very important. And I think Michigan is perfectly poised to be the place where some of this legislation comes out. We take this very seriously. We're a beautiful state. And like I said, situated in such a way. And we do have some big cities around us with Chicago and Detroit on either side, kind of, and the industries there. And that does impact also that air and water quotient. You brought up, the pipelines. I'm not super knowledgeable about that. I've been an epidemiologist and overseen the health department. I've not been in the environmental health, even though we have one and I know what they do. I'm not intimately knowledgeable about it, but I remember that pipeline breaking and down in Kalamazoo, and the man hours, it was a 24/7 operation for so many people to clean that up, to stop it, to handle the wildlife and the streams and things around there. It was huge. For several years, it was the example for emergency response, not COVID. It was that in our area of the country. So all of these things, it affects our food, our air, and our water. And those are the three things that we must have. Like, those are the basic things. We're not talking about all the other things that you need for quality of life. You need those just to be able to exist one day to the next. And if we can't assure that, then that's going to be a real problem. So
absolutely,
I want to talk to the other legislators that are up there already working on some of this stuff, and just join them, because I think there's good ideas.
Absolutely. So I want to talk a little bit about your opponent, Bradley. So I was on his website. I think the two of you are night and day. To me, I'm not going to put my opinion in this. I have lots of opinions after reading his issues, but how do you feel like you differ from him and would be a better choice than he is?
So I voted for Bradley the first two times that he was in state office, because he worked at Ottawa County. He was a colleague of mine for, I think it was about 13 years. He was an elected official. He's been an elected official for many, many years. So since, I would think, about 2001, at like a township trustee level or something. And so he's done this for a really long time. And because he was my colleague, I voted for him for that reason alone, without really looking any further. I just, it seemed like he was doing
You're an apathetic voter.
I was an apathetic voter, and I'm a nice person. And I wanted to cheer on my colleague, Yeah. And you know what? Like I said, we had a 2-hour conversation after he found out that I had filed for his seat. I had a really delightful time. We had wide-ranging conversation, and it was entertaining and fun. And he was very, very nice, very, very nice. And I've heard he has an amazing wife. Many people have told me that she's a wonderful woman, and she's fascinating. So and I told him, I am not going to go after your character, Bradley. That's not the kind of person I am, but I'm going to contrast the issues on how we differ and how we would approach being a state representative, or how I would approach it differently than you. But I'm not going to play the game that I have seen going on here in our community. I'm not going to do that, because that's not how I fly.
And that speaks to your character.
So, I don't want to,
it speaks wonderfully to your character. It truly does.
Yeah.
Politics has become so ugly, so utterly ugly. So I commend you for that.
Thank you. So, the first thing that I've had a problem with, and Bradley's not unique, that there are the 4 state rep seats I told you about in our county. There's, excepting the 5th that has just a tiny piece. They're all Republicans. 3 of the 4 have had nothing to say about what's been going on in the county that they represent. All or part, at least part of their district represents Ottawa County residents. And for Bradley, he's the unique one. All of his district is in Ottawa County. And he has another unique thing in that he worked at the county for 13 years. And I asked around, I checked, I Googled, I talked to people who know more than I know, because I'm very new in this space. What does he think about Ottawa Impact and what's been happening in Ottawa County with the fiscal irresponsibility, the lawsuits racking up, the flagrant breaking of laws just to see what happens, and the way that they treat people, which you and I haven't talked about a lot, but marginalized groups are more marginalized right now. And I hadn't heard anything from those other three, but I really kind of expected to hear something from Bradley because they talked poorly about the management of the county in the past. And he was one of those people running a department in the past and had knowledge that could have corrected some of those statements. He could have made public statements at board meetings. There's always public comment. He could have said something in the paper. He could have done it many different ways, but I didn't hear anything. And I was speaking up, and I was risking my job. Like, I could have been fired any one of the times that I spoke up. Now, I was exercising my ability and my duty to speak as a citizen, and doing it, outside of work hours on my own time. And so hopefully they had good counsel. Maybe that's why I wasn't fired. Like, you can't touch her for that reason, because that's not going to go in your favor. But I was scared. Really scared the first time I gave public comment and criticized what I was seeing and gave some facts to it that weren't known, by the public. And I thought he should do the same thing. I didn't think that less was expected of him than of me. And if I have the courage to speak up, why doesn't an elected official who has a lot of influence and some protection, I mean, they're not going to lose their job that day,
Right.
They could get voted out perhaps, but maybe not. But that's really like getting voted for again shouldn't be the point of the job.
Right.
Like, not saying something because you want to get reelected. I don't know if that's why. I mean, I'm not saying that, but he did, when we had that conversation, he talked to me and he said, I can answer some of those questions and concerns. And he said, I did very much like their platform. I agreed with Ottawa Impact and everything that they had in their vision for the county and the things that they wanted to execute. But the way they did that on that first day was the wrong way to do that. And he said, and then I if I'm remembering right, I don't mean to imply that I'm quoting him exactly, but from my memory, a month or so ago, he said, I believe that they were liars then at that point. But later, I did a little bit of digging. So that was on January 3 that he was referencing, that day that they did all of those terrible things without being on the agenda, without any voter knowing what was going to happen. 3 weeks later, he took the new board chair, Joe Moss, the leader of Ottawa Impact, to the state's State of the State address as his guest in late January, on January 27. I don't know if he was still thinking about it or if he wanted more to watch and longer. I don't know, but I do think that he's just seen more and more. So it's been, almost a year and a half since then, and I'm sure he feels more that way. And he hasn't publicly spoken up until yesterday, when I went to a candidate meet and greet in the district. And they weren't going to talk about the state legislative stuff or state positions, state elected positions. But I called the group and asked if I could be there and if I could maybe give a 3-minute talk too. And so they advertised me along with all of the local county elected officials that were running or wanting to run. And he contacted them and said, why did you not invite me if you invited Marcia? And they said, well, we didn't invite her. She asked, and we said, okay. And then we're sorry, we didn't think of contacting you. And so he reiterated that with them. He said he couldn't come, but he would like to be invited to these things, and that he did not support Ottawa Impact. So I don't know about that, but I'm still out there being very vocal, and I'm making it very, very clear that this is not how I would ever do things, and I will not tolerate it. And I will speak up and use my voice, and I will use the energy and the tools that I have to try to make a difference, because I've had a unique spot. I mean, I've had a front row seat to all of this, and I know some things, so I'd like to use, and I have a little social capital because of Tamara Graham. I mean, I've been on podcasts, and I've been on ABC News, and
You've
in a
been in the
documentary,
Washington Post. You've been all
Washington
over.
Post, right? And so for this little tiny minute of time in my life, I have a little social capital and a little notoriety that's going to vanish, in a really quick time. I mean, it's by next year, it won't be there anymore. And so I want to leverage that.
Maybe not. When you pass these laws, you're going to be the architect of change. You are going to be an architect of change for the better after all of this crazy chaos. That is something that is going to stay with you forever. Everyone's going to know Marcia Mansaray's name. You mark my words. Everyone in Michigan for sure. Even outside of Ottawa County.
You're my cheerleader. Yeah,
Absolutely.
I want to do this in a smart way. So I know the power of good policy from when I passed that smoke-free indoor air legislation back in the county, because we have been tracking adult and youth smoking since that time. And it's gone from, teen smoking has gone from 18% to 1%, which we measured last year when we surveyed 4,000 to 6,000 teens, on this question and many others. And that was one of the things that I knew would happen when we changed the culture of smoking. Kids wouldn't see it. They wouldn't see butts of cigarettes all over the place. They wouldn't see people smoking in all the public places that they go. And it would change. They would not initiate smoking. It wouldn't be this as attractive thing to try. And it takes a long time to see the benefits of that, but we've seen it now. That was in 2008, and in 2023, it was down to 1%. So, it's amazing. It's amazing what good policy does. So I know that laws can be made and not be quite right, because we're living with some of those. But I'm humble enough to know that I could easily do it too. So I want to do this well, and I want to do this right, because good policy is a very efficient way, but bad policy is easy to write. And so I don't want to do that.
Absolutely. Fantastic. So I'm going to go into closing here. I have some fun questions for you, but for people just to get to know you a little bit better. But before I do that, is there anything else that you want people to know about you, Marcia, for this campaign?
I have found that I'm much more courageous than I thought I was. And I have a really strong backbone, and I have no tolerance for unethical behavior. So when you put those three things together, I think it makes a pretty powerful package. I have a lot of passion because of what I've gone through. I have that, that social capital that we talked about, and this has developed in me, I think, the qualities that will make for a courageous and compassionate leader at the State House, because I really care about my people. And my people right now are Ottawa County, but my people will be the state of Michigan, too.
Right.
So
right. I think that's such an important point, because even though you represent the people of Ottawa County, once you're elected, collectively, it's about Michigan. Every office affects everyone in this state. And so getting collectively a group of people who care about people is the most important thing in my book. Character counts. Character matters. It does. So I want to talk about just some fun facts about you for people just to get to know you a little bit better. So I'm just going to throw a few questions at you. Tell us something fun about you that most people don't know. Fun, funny, or quirky. It can be any of the above.
Oh, let's see. So this is weird. I don't think I'm a very funny person. So I think I have sort of I like to laugh. I mean, I find life fun, but I'm not, I can't tell a joke to save my life. I cannot, I was in a job interview once, and they tell us a joke. And I had nothing. I didn't even know a knock-knock joke. So I don't know. There's something funny about me. But I did have 2 naked dogs once, because my children wanted dogs, and they all had allergies. And one of them had asthma that was pretty serious. And I'm like, we have to find the smallest possible dog that doesn't have fur. And so we had 2 little dogs that were soft like baby skin, and they wore little polar fleece outfits that I made for them. And my kids could tolerate it.
What kind of a dog is hairless? I didn't know that we had hairless dogs. Or did you have to shave them?
No. They're naturally hairless. There are a few breeds of hairless dogs that are due to a genetic mutation, and they're not really healthy. But there's one breed called an American Hairless Terrier.
Oh my gosh!
And it's a natural thing for them, and but they're normally a farm dog. And so when farmers saw these pups probably being born, they probably put them down because they probably thought that there was something wrong with them or that they had mange or something like that. So they didn't survive until the 1970s when one farmer brought the mother into the house, into the farmhouse in the kitchen, and saw that these puppies were healthy. They got to be old enough to actually see like, oh, they have no hair, but they seem very fine, and then brought them to MSU, the Michigan State University, which is kind of the farm university in Michigan. So
yeah, interesting.
They were known in the 70s, and so yeah, I found them with a lot of research, using all of my epidemiology skills to research.
What is your favorite band or song? Some people have a favorite band, some people don't. Some people have a favorite song, and some people just have a favorite band. Where do you fall with that? And what is your favorite?
Oh gosh, the first thing that comes to mind is, it ages me. It makes me such a nerd. Neil Diamond.
Oh my gosh. Which one?
Or Cat Stevens. It's kind of between those two. Cat Stevens stopped making all the cool pop songs because, he had a faith experience and became a Muslim and started kind of writing those kinds of songs. So then he sort of disappeared. And there's an album that Neil Diamond had a live concert out in California, and I love that live album. I like almost every song on that album.
Nice.
But I love it because my mom loved it, and she played it in her Volkswagen on the 8-track tape player.
Nice.
With the sunroof open, and we would sing those songs together.
Oh my gosh, that would have been fun. That's a fun memory to have. Okay, this one is maybe a little bit more serious of a question, but who do you credit for having the greatest influence on your life? I think I can guess this one, maybe.
Gosh, that's a really hard one. I have had amazing people in my life.
That's a hard one for me too, honestly.
Yeah, my spouse is my second husband, and we're together, parents of 6 children and 2 grandchildren, and he brought joy to my life in a way that I had not known it. Coming from Africa and a very impoverished childhood, but filled with joy and love. And he brought joy and love to me. So he's very influential. Lisa Stefanowski, the health officer for 32 years, or well, actually 16 years, 32 years at the health department, was my mentor. And she taught me what leadership looks like when you care about people and how you can step aside and let people bloom and become experts without feeling threatened as the leader. And because she did that every day, and she did that to me. And I didn't know that was what she was doing. She was doing that to build more leaders intentionally. I learned a lot from her, and I love her deeply. I have some really good, I have had some beautiful people in my life, and all of them together, in addition to the Ottawa Impact. I mean, those commissioners, they made me a better person. They really did. I had a choice. I could get bitter, or I could be brave. I could hate, or I could love. And it feels good turning 60 and retiring to know that I was tempted to go one way, and I chose the other way. And at this age, it feels really good.
It's a perfect place to end. Thank you, Marcia.
Thank you, Tamara.
I appreciate your time, and I'm rooting for you. And sorry, Bradley, you're going to lose.
Well, I will take him out to coffee and give him a big hug for the service he's given us. But yeah, I think it's time for someone new. And to reform the Republican Party, I think the most effective way would be to have a whole bunch of Democrats voted in. I think that would freak them out and make them get serious.
Thanks for listening to The Righteous Uproar. Be sure to check out our show notes for information and links discussed and related to this podcast episode. If you enjoy our podcast, please give us a 5-star rating wherever you are listening, and be sure to share it with your friends. This really helps us. This podcast is part of the Live, Love, Local Michigan network of podcasts. I am your host and producer, Tamara Graham. Co-producer is Taryn Demalcharugu. Music is by Soul Shifters. To subscribe to our parent magazine, where we celebrate Michigan through amazing adventures, stunning photography, high-profile content, and more, visit our website at livelovelocalmi.com. Visit our foundation website at lovewhereyoulivefoundation.org and learn more about our initiatives, including our Bring the Love initiative for Michigan volunteer firefighters, our Indigenous Voices initiative supporting Michigan Indigenous boarding school survivors, our resilience documentary on one man's journey to recover from divorce by throwing himself into bodybuilding, and Postcard from a Friend, where we help spread love and support throughout Michigan and beyond. To purchase products to support our initiatives, visit our shop at shoplivelovelocalmi.com. That is shoplivelovelocalmi.com. We'll see you on the next podcast.